In Python programming language, a list can be used to store multiple values into a single variable. These lists are different from Python arrays in the sense that arrays are used for arithmetic computations, whereas a list is not used for arithmetic computations. A Python list can store integers, strings, and even Boolean values. And also, they have several use cases. In today's video, we're going to be exploring Python lists and the different use cases that apply. Stick with us. And here again, we have our Jupyter notebook opened up where we have created another project, which we call a simple Python list. Now, let us create a basic Python list. Now, like I said, a Python list, maybe just declare a variable. A Python list can be used to store an integer. It can also be used, let me just call this variable 1. Now, by the way, if you're declaring a Python list, you use a square bracket, okay? And also you can use a double regular bracket. I'm going to show that example after this. So like I said, you can store an integer, you can store Boolean values, A Python list can also store regular strings. You can just put anything, just as an example. Let's run this. So it can also store basic strings, okay? Now let us declare a Python list, a basic Python list. I'm calling this a variable air, and air has elements such as airplane, jet, rocket, helicopter, and parachute, okay? So these are just basic items that you see that are airborne, okay? Now, in Python lists, each item in the list has a numbering. It has an index sequence, okay? As here we have the same Python list we call air, and these are the different elements that are inside this Python list. Now, if we are counting in a Python list, it depends if we are counting forward or backward. Now, if we are counting forward, we take our count from 0. So airplane has 0, jet has number 1, rocket is number 2. These are the indexes. Helicopter is 3 and parachute is 4. But if we are counting backwards, we start counting from -1, okay? So counting backwards to forward, parachute will be -1, helicopter will be -2, rocket -3, jet will be -4, and airplane will be -5. Now back to our Jupyter notebook where we have a list where we have declared as air. Now let us just check if we are to get the 0th index, what would this be? An airplane, because we start our forward count from 0. How about if we are to say air and we get maybe the 3rd count? Helicopter, because it takes this as 0, 1, 2, 3. So air, the 3rd index in the variable air will be helicopter. Now, parachute will be the 4th index. Let us declare a 5th index and see. There is no 5th value. So it gives you an error because the last value is the 4th value. If you run the 4th value to give you the parachute, that's for your forward count. Now let's try it if we are to count backwards, okay? Let's declare -2 and let's see. -2 will be parachute, helicopter. Helicopter will be counting backwards too. So helicopter. Let's see, air, -5 should be airplane, okay? All right. Now, the same way you can count forward and count back, you can also count a range of numbers, okay? So let's say we have air, and we can count from 1 to 3, okay? Now, take note of something. If you are doing a regular count, like the fourth one, it will count 0 to 4, which is parachute, right? But if you are counting a range, it will start from the first number you're declaring and it will stop at the last number before where you are ending. So it will start counting from 1, but it will not stop at 3, it will stop at 2. Okay? If I were to do this to be 1 to 4, it means it will start counting from 1, but it will not stop at 4, it will stop at 3. Meaning that from airplane 0, it will start counting from jets, 2 and 3, helicopter. This is how it will stop. Jet, rocket, helicopter. So if I run this, you get jet, rocket, and helicopter. There you go. The same way you can run it backwards. You can choose to run it backwards, maybe -2 to -4. Now back to our array, -2 to -4. This is the second one, helicopter. That is -2, but -4 is jets. Okay, so that's that. Oh, sorry. Oh, no. This is actually the invert. We're supposed to do -4 to -2. Okay, what happened there was that we started from -2 and to -4, and it cannot count outside it. So we needed to have said -4 to -2 if you actually want to get any content, because it will start counting from -4, which is jet. So if you run it this way, you should get a content. The previous we did, we're saying -2, which is from helicopter to the other way, and it doesn't count that way. Okay. In a Python list, you can actually change the values in the list using either the indexing or the value of that list itself. Let me show you a basic use case. Here we have this same variable. Let me just copy it and paste it just so that we can have it immediately displayed. Okay, so if you have a value here, maybe the first one, which is jets. Let's call jets what should we call it? Fighter jets. Then run air. So what we have done here is we have changed jet to fighter jet. But if you notice, this value is actually inside another container itself. So there are better ways of doing this. One other way you can do is to say from 1 to 2. All right. So from 1 to 2, it will not get up to 2 to stop at 1. So it's the same value you are picking, just one value. That is to say, it will start counting from 1 and it will stop at 1 because it will not count up to 2. So you are still changing the same value. But the difference is that instead of getting what you've gotten here, okay, let me copy this into another, just for you to see the difference. Just for you to see the difference. Now this first one, all we did was to change just air, and we got fighter jets inside this. But in this case, instead of saying just 1, we're going to say from 1 to 2, and we're supplying the same fighter jet. So we're changing jets to fighter jets. Now watch the difference. Fighter jet will not come in a list on its own. So in this first case, there's a list embedded into the list. But in this case, fighter jet value gets replaced. Okay. You can also choose to change a range of values, specify an index, and it will insert the value inside that index and push the other values a bit further. So the way you do that is to declare an insert method, okay? And with this insert method, you need to specify the index you want to insert the value. Now, take note of something. Your previous value of air was jets, but now had jets, but this value has been replaced. So this is a new value you're working with, okay? So let's assume you want to insert into the first index, and the value you want to insert is, now in this case, you're going to use a regular bracket, okay? So now you want to insert jets, okay? So what will the value of that variable be? So you can see that jet gets inserted into the list and it pushes fighter jet away. Okay, so now jet has taken position 1. Fighter jet now will be pushed one step further to take position 2. Okay, as you can see, declare position 2 is the fighter jets. Okay, now let us declare another Python list variable. Now, like I said, there are 2 ways of declaring a list. You can also use double brackets, and let's just insert these numbers and run this variable. And let's see, this is a list. Okay, we can choose to append the append method and just, let's say, parachutes. And then here we have append. So append will add the value you're appending to the last part of the list. All right. Now, in a Python list, you can choose to delete an item. So you can choose to remove any of the items in this list using the remove method. So you can just go remove method. Let's just say we want to get out fighter jets. Let's just go there. And our new variable will not have fighter jets among the items. You can also choose to remove it by the index. Okay. Now, using the pop method, if you supply an index number, it will remove that item of that index. But if you don't supply any index number, it will remove the last item of the list. So in this case, the last item is parachute. Okay, so if you run this, you see that parachute will no longer be a part of the list. But let's just run this same stuff again and choose maybe the first item, of which, you know, the first index is 0. Okay, so you're supposed to remove jets from the mixture and just leave it with airplane and rockets. Last but not the least, let's just look at a loop in a list. Let us declare another variable, test variable, and call it. Okay, so we have created a variable, and now let us run and see a variable. Now we can decide to run a for loop on this variable. For x in variable, print all the values that come along with x. Okay, so it reads through the lists and prints out all the values. All right, so that's it for today's video on Python lists. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you're new. Or until we meet again, bye-bye.